5 Little Peppers Abroad, written by Margaret Sidney. Chapter 17. Polly wrote a nice little note. "Polly," said Jasper, running down the stairs after her, on her way to the little garden at the terrace at Heidelberg. "Here's something for you. Just came in the mail." "For me?" said Polly, as he put a little parcel in her hand. "Yes," said Jasper. "Father just gave it to me." "What can it be?" cried Polly wonderingly. "Oh, something from Alexia or one of the other girls, most likely." And she tore off the outer wrapper. "It is registered," said Jasper. "And Mr. Henderson got it out for you, Father said. That can't be from one of the girls, Polly," as the next layer of paper dropping off disclosed the name of one of the biggest of big London jewelers across a wooden box. "What can it be?" gasped Polly, tugging at the cover. "Here, let me." Jasper essayed to open it, but it stuck fast in the slide. Another pull, and a little red leather case appeared in view. "What in the world?" began Polly. "Oh, it can't be for me!" And she stood staring at it without any attempt to take it out. "It must be for you, Polly," said Jasper. "There couldn't be any other Miss Mary Pepper, and besides, it is addressed to Father's care, and comes through our bankers. See here." He stooped and picked up the outer wrapper. It was torn almost in two, but the name and address was all there. So Polly lifted out the little red leather case, still feeling very much as if she were opening a parcel belonging to someone else, and touching a spring at the end, the top flew up, and there on a white satin bed lay a little green enameled watch, set with diamonds. "Oh, dear me!" exclaimed Polly, tumbling back in the utmost distress. "Now I have got someone else's box, Jasper. How very dreadful!" "Let us go to Father," said Jasper, feeling this quite beyond him. "Shut the box up tight, Polly. It might tumble out on the way." "You carry it, do, Jasper," begged Polly, with an eye askance at the little case, and snapping the cover down, she set it in his hand. "All right, now, then," said Jasper. "We must carry these papers and wooden box and the whole business. Don't worry, Polly," seeing her face. "Father will straighten it out." "Give me the wrapper, Jasper, and the wooden box, if only you'll take the other," said Polly, feeling very much depressed at coming into possession of other people's property. And Jasper followed with the little enameled watch. And Grandpapa was just as much astounded as was Polly herself, and all the family congregating in Mother Fisher's room. The little watch was handed about from one to the other, and everybody stared at everybody else, and the mystery thickened at every moment. And the strangest thing about it was that no one opened the little back cover, where anyone might have read, "Polly Pepper, from her grateful friend Arthur Selwyn," until the middle of the night, when Jasper was awakened by a noise as if someone were prowling around in his father's room. He startled up and listened. "It is I," said old Mr. King's voice. So Jasper threw on his wrapper and hurried in. There sat his father, in dressing gown and slippers, by the table with the little enameled watch in his hand. "Of all the idiots, Jasper," he exclaimed, "your father is the very worst. I've only just this moment thought to look in here." He flashed the little watch around in Jasper's face. It was now opened at the back. "Dear me!" said Jasper, for want of anything better to say, as he read the inscription. Then he looked helplessly at his father. "Earl or no Earl, this piece of foolishness goes back," fumed old Mr. King, getting out of his chair and beginning to march back and forth across the floor as he always did when irritated. "Yes, sir, the very first thing in the morning," he repeated as vehemently as if Jasper had contradicted him. "But, Father," began the boy. "Yes, sir, it goes back, I tell you," repeated his father, now well wrought up to a passion. "What right has he to send such a piece of foolishness to my Polly Pepper? I can give her all the watches she needs, and this trumpery," pointing to the jeweled gift still lying in Jasper's hand, "is utterly unfit for a schoolgirl. You know that yourself, Jasper." "But Polly was kind to him," began Jasper again. "Kind to him?" snorted his father. "Don't I know that? Of course she was. Polly Pepper would be kind to anyone, but that's no reason why the old idiot should presume to give her such a silly and expensive present as that. The man doesn't know anything who would do such a thing, and this one is queerer than the average." "As you say, he is eccentric," observed Jasper, seeing here a loophole by which to get in a soothing word. "Eccentric? That's a mild way to put it," fumed his father. "He's odder than Dick's hatband. Heaven save old England if many of her earls are like him. Well, I shall just write the fellow a decent sort of a note, and then I'll pack the box off to him, and that'll be the end of the matter." "I'm afraid Polly will be sorry," said Jasper, feeling at a standstill so far as finding the right word was concerned, for everything he uttered only seemed to make matters worse. So he said the best thing he could think of and stopped short. "Sorry?" Old Mr. King came to a dead stop and glared at him. "You can't mean that Polly Pepper would like me to keep that watch. It's the last thing on earth that she would want, such a gewgaw as that. Why, the child hates the sight of it already as much as I do." "I don't think Polly would want the watch," said Jasper quickly. "I know she doesn't like it, and I'm sure I wish I could smash it myself," he added in a burst. "That's the most sensible thing you've said yet, Jasper," said his father with a grim smile. "But she would feel dreadfully for you to send it back, for don't you see, Father, that would hurt his feelings, and Polly would worry awfully to have that happen." Old Mr. King turned uneasily, took a few steps, then came back to throw himself into his chair again. "And this old gentleman has such ill attacks," said Jasper, pursuing his advantage, "that it might be the very thing to bring one on if he should get that watch back." Say no more, Jasper," said his father shortly. "Put this thing up for tonight and then get back to bed again." And Jasper knew that was the end of it. And the next day Polly wrote a nice little note, thanking the old earl for his gift and hoping that he was quite well, and with so many other pleasant things in it that if she could have seen him when he received it, she would have been glad indeed. And then she handed the little red leather case to Mr. King. "Keep it for me, Grandpapa," she said simply. "All right, Polly, my child," he said, and then everybody forgot all about the episode and proceeded to enjoy Heidelberg. "I'm so sorry for people who are not going to Bayreuth, Adela," exclaimed Polly, looking out of the compartment window as the train steamed rapidly on from Nuremberg, where they had passed several days of delight reveling in the old town. Adela, with her mind more on those past delights, had less attention for thoughts of music, so she answered absently, "Yes. Oh, Polly, wasn't that pentagonal tower fine? What is it that they call it in German?" But Polly didn't hear, being absorbed in the Wagner festival of which her mind was full, so Jasper answered for her. "Alten Nuremberg, you mean, the oldest building of all Nuremberg." "Yes," said Adela. "Well, I got 2 or 3 sketches of that tower." "Did you?" cried Jasper. "Now that's good." "And I got that horrible old robber knight, what's his name? Sitting inside his cell, you know." "Eppeline von Gellingen," supplied Jasper. "Well, he was a horrible-looking customer, and that's a fact." "Oh, I liked him," said Adela, who rejoiced in ugly things if only picturesque, "and I got into one corner of the cell opposite him, so as to sketch it all as well as I could in such a dark place, and a lady came down the little stairs. You remember them?" "I rather think I do," said Jasper grimly. "I was trying to get out of the way of a huge party of tourists, and I nearly broke my neck." "Well, this lady came down the stairs. I could see her where I sat, but she couldn't see me. It was so dark in the cell. And she called to her husband. I guess he was her husband, because he looked so triste." Adela often fell into French from being so long at the Paris school, and not from affectation in the least. And she said, "Come, Henry, let us see what is in there." And she took one step in, and peered into that robber knight's face. You know how he is, sitting on a little stool, his black hair all round his face, staring at one. "Yes, I do," said Jasper. "He was uncanny enough, and in the darkness, his wax features, or whatever they were made of, were unpleasantly natural to the last degree." "Well," said Adela, "the lady gave a little squeal and tumbled right back into her husband's arms, and I guess she stepped on his toes, for he squealed too, though in a different way, and he gave her a little push and told her not to be a goose, that the man had been dead for 1,000 years more or less and couldn't hurt her. So then she stepped back, awfully scared though, I could see that, and then she caught sight of me, and she squealed again and jumped, and she screamed right out, Oh, there's another in there, in the corner, and it glared at me." "And I didn't glare at all," finished Adela in disdain. And then I guess he was scared too, for he said, "That old cell isn't worth seeing anyway, and I'm going down into the torture chamber." And they hurried off. "That torture chamber!" exclaimed Jasper. "How anyone can hang over those things I don't see. For my part, I'd rather have my time somewhere else." "Oh, I like them," said Adela in great satisfaction. "And I've got a picture of the Iron Virgin." "That was a good idea to put the old scold into that wooden tub concern," said Jasper. "There was some sense in that. I took a picture of it, and the old tower itself. I got a splendid photograph of it, if it will only develop well," he added. "Oh, but the buildings! Was there ever anything so fine as those old Nuremberg houses, with their high-peaked gables? I have quantities of them, thanks to my Kodak." "What's this station, I wonder?" asked Polly, as the train slowed up. Two ladies on the platform made a sudden dash at their compartment. "All full," said the guard, waving them off. "That was Fanny Vanderburgh," gasped Polly. "And her mother," added Jasper. "Who was it?" demanded old Mr. King. His consternation when they told him was so great that Jasper racked his brains some way to avoid the meeting. "If once we were at Bayreuth, it's possible that we might not come across them, Father, for we could easily be lost in the crowd." "No such good luck," groaned old Mr. King, which was proved true. For the first persons who walked into the hotel, as the manager was giving directions that the rooms reserved for their party should be shown them, were Mrs. Vanderburgh and her daughter. "Oh!" exclaimed Mrs. Vanderburgh, as if her dearest friends were before her. "How glad I am to see you again, dear Mr. King, and you all." She swept Mrs. Fisher and Mrs. Henderson lightly in her glance, as if toleration only were to be observed toward them. "We have been perfectly désolée without you, Polly, my dear," she went on with a charming smile. "Fanny will be happy once more. She has been disconsolate ever since we parted, I assure you." Polly made some sort of a reply, and greeted Fanny, as of old times, on the steamer. But Mrs. Vanderburgh went on, all smiles and eagerness, so rapidly in her friendly intentions, that it boded ill for the future peace of Mr. King's party. So Mr. King broke into the torrent of words at once, without any more scruple. "And now, Mrs. Vanderburgh, if you will excuse us, we are quite tired, and are going to our rooms." And he bowed himself off, and of course his family followed. The next moment Fanny and her mother were alone. "If this is to be the way," said Mrs. Vanderburgh, with a savage little laugh, "we might much better have stayed in Paris, for I never should have thought, as you know, Fanny, of coming to this out-of-the-way place, seeing that I don't care for the music, if I hadn't heard them say on the steamer that this was their date here." "Well, I wish that I was at home," declared Fanny passionately. "And I never, never will come to Europe, Mamma, again, as long as I live. You are always chasing after people who run away from you, and those who like me, you won't let me speak to." "Well, I shall be thankful for the day when you are once in society," said her mother, every shred of self-control now gone, "and I shall sell my tickets for this old Wagner festival, and go back to Paris tomorrow morning." At that, Fanny broke into a dismal fit of complaining, which continued all the time they were dressing for dinner, and getting settled in their room, and then at intervals through that meal. Polly looked over at her gloomy face, 3 tables off, and her own fell. "You are not eating anything, child," said Grandpapa presently, with a keen glance at her. "Let me order something more." "Oh, no, Grandpapa." And "Yes, I will," she cried incoherently, making a great effort to enjoy the nice things he piled on her plate. Jasper followed her glance as it rested on the Vanderburgh table. "They will spoil everything," he thought, "and to think it should happen at Bayreuth." "Yes, we are going," said Fanny Vanderburgh as they met after dinner in the corridor. Her eyes were swollen, and she twisted her handkerchief in her fingers. "And I did, here she broke down and sobbed, "so want to hear the Wagner operas." "Don't cry," begged Polly, quite shocked. "Oh, Fanny, why can't you stay? How very dreadful to lose the Wagner music." Polly could think of no worse calamity that could befall one. "Mamma doesn't know anybody here except your party," mumbled Fanny, "and she's upset and declares that we must go back to Paris tomorrow. Oh, Polly Pepper, I hate Paris," she exploded, and then sobbed worse than ever. "Wait here," said Polly, "till I come back." Then she ran on light feet to Grandpapa, just settling behind a newspaper in a corner of the general reading room. "Grandpapa, dear, may I speak to you a minute?" asked Polly, with a woeful feeling at her heart. It seemed as if he must hear it beating. "Why, yes, child, to be sure," said Mr. King, quite surprised at her manner. "What is it?" And he laid aside his paper and smiled reassuringly, but Polly's heart sank worse than ever. "Grandpapa," she began desperately, "Fanny Vanderburgh is feeling dreadfully." "And I should think she would, with such a mother," exclaimed the old gentleman, but in a guarded tone. "Well, what of it, Polly?" "Grandpapa," said Polly, "she says her mother is going to take her back to Paris tomorrow morning." "How very fine!" exclaimed Mr. King approvingly. "That is the best thing I have heard yet. Always bring me such good news, Polly, and I will lay down my newspapers willingly any time." And he gave a pleased little laugh. "But, Grandpapa," and Polly's face drooped, and there was such a sad little note in her voice that the laugh dropped out of his. "Fanny wanted above all things to hear the Wagner operas. Just think of losing those." Polly clasped her hands, and every bit of color flew from her cheek. "Well, what can I do about it?" asked the old gentleman in a great state of perturbation. "Speak out, child, and tell me what you want." "Only if I can be pleasant to Fanny," said Polly, a wave of color rushing over her face. "I mean, if I may go with her. Can I, Grandpapa, this very evening? Just as if—" she hesitated. "As if what, Polly?" "As if we all liked them," finished Polly, feeling as if the words must be said. There was an awful pause in which Polly had all she could do to keep from rushing from the room. Then Grandpapa said, "If you can stand it, Polly, you may do as you like, but I warn you to keep them away from me." And he went back to his paper.